Welcome back to the Show My Scars podcast. I'm your host, Derek Duker. Today I'm catching up with an acquaintance of mine I met as a sports writer up in Waynesville. I covered his son, who played for the Waynesville Tigers at the time. He hit me up on LinkedIn after I made a post over there talking about my podcast, and he told me he has quite a story to tell from both his childhood and time he spent over in Iraq as military police. So let's not dilly-dally any further. Here's my conversation with Orlando Ochoa. Well, man, appreciate you coming on the podcast and trying to think what the last year was that we would have seen each other.
Noah graduated, let me think. I think it was in 2018. Yeah. So that was probably the last time that we had any contact with one another.
Yeah, which for everybody out there that maybe has missed a podcast in the past, I used to be a sports writer for a long time up in Waynesville, and that's where me and the Ochoa family met as I covered, I think it was just Noah, if I remember correctly.
I think so. I think it was just Noah. I think Lexi and Matthew had already graduated by the time you started working at the paper.
Yeah, because I got there, I remember New Year's Day is when I moved in to Waynesville, New Year's Day 2014. And then, I would have left shortly, probably around 2017 or 2018. So, that would have just been.
Okay, so then you probably didn't interview Lexi, but you did write on her because I think she graduated in 14. So that first year, well, I guess softball is in the fall. So if you came in January, you had just missed the season.
Yeah.
Senior year.
Yeah, I might have done like a little article on where she was going to college or something like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, man, so it's been a long time since we had talked. And, for the folks that maybe follow me on Facebook, off and on, I post the episodes over on LinkedIn. And that's how we reconnected. I think you might have saw my episode I did with Rustin Pangburn, who's a former convict and now is trying to work on getting a reacclimation process set up here in Springfield, Missouri. But I appreciate you reaching out because you said you had some stories to tell that might be helpful to other people. So let's get started with, first I like to just get into like who people were growing up, because I find it fascinating how life starts off for us and then where we end up at.
I was born on August 24th, 1973 in Powell, Wyoming. My parents had both moved to Powell from the south, Dilley, Texas. It's about 75 miles or so north of Laredo, Texas. So it's really close to the border, but they had moved to Wyoming to work. 5 years after they moved there, I was born. Everybody calls me Billy. My name is Orlando Ochoa. That is it. But the name Billy came from, I was in Wyoming, and when I was born, they would sing Billy Boy, oh, where have you come, or where have you been, charming Billy? And that became my nickname. So I've always gone by Billy. My life started off that way. I have 15 brothers and sisters. The closest ones to my age are 15 and 16 years older than I am on my mom's side. So my mom had 6 kids, and my dad had, with his first wife, 8 kids. And then with the girlfriend in between, he had the 15th one. So there's 15 total. I'm the lucky number 16. I don't have any full siblings. Fun fact, my dad was born in 1919. And I am 51 or 52 this year. My grandparents on his side were born in the 1800s. So That's just, I'm alive in 2025, and my grandparents were born even a century ago. So it's just one of those things. But again, like I was explaining, the day I was born, I was an uncle. I have nieces and nephews that have already passed away, that they were 20, 30 years older than I was already. So then we moved to Texas. I graduated from high school there, met my wife, played sports, did all the high school stuff that kids do, I played football, basketball, baseball, just because I was in a small two-way school. I worked at the prison in Texas for about 3 years. That was fun, rough at the same time. I worked in some minimum security. I worked in some transfer facilities, which are like state jails, is what they call them now. And then I worked at a max for a little bit, just on some backfilling days and stuff. But I've had a pretty rough time there. I got hit with a lock in the sock. We can go into that later if you'd like. In the mouth, and lost one tooth. I have a fake tooth back here. And then I decided it was safer for me to join the Army and become an MP. So I joined the Army in 1996. I've served 21 years. I retired in 2017, deployed 3 times to Iraq. My second deployment, one of my guys had counted, and I was involved in like 35, 38, something like that. Different engagements of either being mortared, shot at, IED, VBIEDs, the vehicle-borne IEDs, just 30 some of those in a year. Well, there was one night that I changed out my vehicle 4 times because of IED explosions. So this is just a quick rundown of who I am.
Yeah.
And I haven't even finished. And then I had 3 kids. We've got 3 grandchildren. We're in Texas. And again, we can go into it in a little bit, but I had my sister, that was married to my brother, like I talked to you about earlier.
How does that shape your perspective, or if at all? Like, how did that exactly come to be?
My mom and my dad met, I guess, somewhere around 1968, 67, 68, somewhere around there. My mom's daughter met my father's son around the same time. They ended up getting together, married. They did not have any children. My sister had children. My brother had children, but they just married each other, kind of had a Brady Bunch family going on. And then 5, 6 years later, I was born. And when I was born, my sister was married to my brother. How did that shape me? It shaped me. I'm starting to deal with this now because this has caused trauma in my life, because I just don't understand. My sister was not a good person. She is not a good person. She's still around. I don't talk to her. But my brother ended up doing some things to some other children, and he ended up serving time for that. But I remember my nieces and nephews getting beat, and I would be in the way, and my sister would yell to whoever was beating my nephews and nieces to not hit him. You're not allowed to hit him. And she would pull me one day and go, okay, go ahead. And I think that gave me a false sense of security, kind of, because I've done some crazy things in my time. I kind of live on the edge sometimes, just doing wild things, not skydiving and stuff like that, just like around here. If I need to jump on the truck, I jump on the truck. If I need to jump off, I jump off. And if I need to pick up a 200-pound bag of feed, I pick it up. I don't wait for anything. I just grab it and let's go. But with the way that all that happened with my brother and my sister, it confused me, I think, is the best way. Because again, I didn't talk until I was about 4, almost when I was in school, because my tongue was, I was tongue tied. It was stuck to the bottom of my mouth. And then my parents spoke to me in Spanish. My siblings spoke to me in English. So I was confused and tongue tied. They snipped it, and I never shut up since. But I've never shut up since. That's what my sisters would say, that once I started talking, I've never shut up. But I think I've talked so much because I've tried to mask, and I'm starting to learn this now through therapy, is that it's a coping mechanism that I've built since I was little to cope with all the things that I saw with my nieces and nephews, them getting hit, them getting beat, them doing that. And I just turned into a clown. I don't take things very seriously. I try not to. But now going to counseling, the counselor's looking at me going, she was like, well, this isn't healthy. You can't make jokes about everything. As a matter of fact, I'm in a EMDR PTSD session right now to help with my PTSD, my TBI. And today we were talking about some old trauma that I had. And one of the things that came back to me was Flat Stanley. It kind of mixes in with the story. I won't say the individual's name, but there was a soldier that was KIA'd in Iraq. And when had me doing the tapping and bringing up the memories and stuff, I pictured this individual as Flat Stanley because he had been crushed. It was kind of my way of my mind protecting myself again, making a joke of it and going, this isn't real. It's Flat Stanley. Look, you've seen Flat Stanley. And it made me laugh. And my counselor even laughed. But she was like, this is your brain again working to protect you. And she doesn't think that that part of it has started from my Army trauma. She thinks that that is from my childhood trauma, from my nieces and nephews and how they were treated.
That's interesting you say that, because literally the last podcast I did, we touched on this briefly, but growing up, that's how I always was. I was like the class clown everywhere. There wasn't a joke out there that I wouldn't make. I think I told her that I've definitely made jokes at funerals. Not at the expense of the person in the casket, but I tell a story about them that's probably not appropriate to tell, but to me that's like who they were, and that's the role I'm supposed to play. I don't know how to, all I want to do is make people feel better, and the only way I ever knew how to do that growing up was to joke around and get people to smile and move on with things. I haven't had anybody say that might not be healthy. I might bring that up next time, because I definitely still do that and do it a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, I had a nephew. He was my age. He died a few years ago, and I did his eulogy. And that's what I did. I went up there. I had written it out. It was like a 2.5-page eulogy. And I kind of skimmed off of it and just had it for my notes. But I made a bunch of comments and jokes about his life and stuff. And most of the people there, they knew who I was. But I did introduce myself and say, I'm a jokester. I don't take things seriously. But now and she's not saying that it's not healthy. She's just saying that it's probably not healthy to be doing it with everything, and that seems to be what my brain does, is just takes everything that it doesn't need to be serious. It needs to be a joke.
And so after you come out of this huge family, and you talked a little bit about your career history there, what was that first job that you took that you can kind of see led you to the military?
Well, we will rewind all the way back to when I was about 4 or 5 years old. One of my nieces, we were by a fire in Wyoming. Her brother, my nephew, grabbed a thing of water. He thought it was water, but somebody had poured a little bit of gas in it, and he threw it, and it caught her leg on fire. She had to have surgery and all this, and to this day, she still has her leg is scarred up. But that day was when I decided I wanted to be a firefighter, because I remember running around the corner of the house, turning on the water hose, coming around and spraying her with water. And that day's when I decided that I wanted to either be a firefighter or a police officer. So I didn't really want to go into the Army. I wanted to be a Texas State Trooper. And that was my goal. People ask me what happened. I like to just say life. My wife and I had 2 children. I couldn't keep working the way I was working at the prison. It was a rough go. So we decided to join the Army and do a little traveling. So that's what took me into the space of law enforcement or Army, because that was the catalyst that pushed me there. But it happened all the way from when I was 4 or 5 years old.
I know people have their own conceptions, and I've had a few family members who have entered the military, but I think, as you said on the phone with me when we were talking about doing this episode, no two experiences are the same as far as what it was like entering into the military for the first time. What was your experience like?
Well, I was married, had already been married for a few years. I had 2 children. I was 23 years old. And I worked at a prison. So for me, going into the military, it was a chance to get out of my small town of Dilley, Texas. There's oil fields there and prisons, and a prison. So that's about either that or one of the fast food places. So we wanted to get our family out. So I wanted to move and do something else. I always wanted to be in law enforcement. I wasn't going to be able to do that with the state troopers, so I went to the Army, and my experience was great. I mean, don't get me wrong, I got yelled at. They made me do push-ups, sit-ups, flutter kicks. They made me run. I got caught eating ice cream and cake at the same time. You're only supposed to have one dessert, and they made me do so many push-ups until I puked. So my time entering the Army was a little awkward because I was 23, everybody else was 18, but being that kid at heart, always joking, I kind of fit in. So it wasn't bad. The hardest part for me was I had my oldest son, Matthew and Lexi, and I missed them and my wife. But for me, that was the hardest part, was just being gone, because I hadn't been gone from them. It was funny because that was the first of many times that I would end up leaving and doing other things for the Army. But yeah, my time going into the Army was really positive. I don't see anything negative from that time.
And you said, how many years did you say that you were?
20 years, 10 months, and 3 days, but who was counting?
Sounds like you were.
Yep.
Yeah, and you said you were an MP, right?
Yep, I was military police in the Army for 21 years. Went to basic training at Fort McClellan, Alabama, and then I went to different duty stations. First duty station was Fort Benning, Georgia, and then it was Johnston Atoll, and then it was Fort Carson, and then it was Fort Hood, and then it was Fort Leonard Wood, and that's where I retired. Fort Hood and Fort Leonard Wood is where I spent 6 years at Hood and 7, I think, or 8 at Missouri at Leonard Wood.
What does the duty of an MP entail?
Army MPs on what we call stateside or not deployed, being at your duty station, entails just what any police officer is doing. He or she is patrolling the streets of that post on shifts. Now, you'll do it for a month at a time, so you try to have 3 groups or 3 platoons, 3 companies to run a post, because you can have, for a month, these guys run the post and they're running law enforcement duties. Then the next month they're out training to be a combat MP, and then the third month they would be cleaning all of their equipment from the time they went to the field and did all that other stuff, the ranges and all that. So they broke it up into 3 sections. Anybody that was in the Army always remembers doing the green, gold, and something else. I can't remember what colors they were, or red, green, and amber, I think, cycles. And when everybody else did post details like picking up trash or going to do this for this unit or painting this for this Ernal or whatever, we work the road. So we work the road as MPs. Now, when we go to combat, we do TCPs where we're helping convoys get from point A to point B without getting lost. You remember the girl that became a POW in 03. I don't remember her name. Jessica. I can't remember her name, but they got captured in Iraq in 03. They didn't have MPs giving them directions. We would set up there. I've ran security patrols. We've secured routes. So we have EPW missions. There's a bunch of different missions that the MPs run during combat.
Did you choose that, or that to be an MP, or do they kind of like almost like right now it's NFL draft season, they had the combine? Do they like what would he be good at?
Yeah, no, they actually take you into what they call a MEP station. First, you go to the recruiter's office. The recruiter will talk to you and he'll give you about 60-40, 60% lies, 40% truth, sometimes 60% truth and 40% lies. But they're trying to convince you because, again, after 21 years in the Army, I hold nothing against the Army. I love the Army. Everything that I have to this day is because the Army was good to me. So don't take anything that I'm saying as a negative thing towards the Army, because I am a big advocate for the Army. But they send you in, and once they find out kind of what job you want, they take you to MEPS. That's where you do your physical, and you do all that whole day of, it's literally 8 to 12 hours of sitting from one room to another, and they're giving you tests and batteries, and they're having you ask these questions. And sometimes you're just sitting in a waiting room watching Fox or CNN or some old gunsmith movie or that gunslinger movie or something, So it's not exciting, but then they come out. If, like, when I went in and said I wanted to be a law enforcement, I wanted to be an MP. They took me back. They said, we don't have any positions open for MPs. So I said, okay, I'm leaving. I left. I came back 2 weeks later. They looked again. They were like, I went through all the tests again. I was like, I'm not signing until I sign for an MP. They did offer me another position. I think it was a fueler of some sort. And I talked to my wife because they were trying to give me a bonus to be a fueler. And I was like, well, we could use the money. And she was like, nope, you said MP or nothing. So I told them that again. And they gave me they found an open slot for an MP. But most people end up doing the same process. And then they get told, hey, we don't have that job. You want to be in aviation? We don't have that. We have a cook. We'll give you $10,000 bonus. And they're like, okay, I'll take it. And that's how they get their jobs. So I was lucky enough to have my wife behind me being in my ear going, no, you said you were going to only do it if you got this job. So that's how I lucked out.
From what I'm piecing together, maybe some of the, like, the story you told earlier, that's kind of what drew you to that position, you know, kind of
Yes.
being, yeah.
And now that I'm older, I understand it a little bit better. I've talked to one of my counselors. I can't remember which one it was that we had talked about. And she was like, because I have a really soft heart for kids in need, for kids that are in trouble, even just kids, period. But she said that all comes from the things that I witnessed them going through. My parents were good to me.
Mm-hmm.
Did my dad spank me? Yes, he did. He was born 1919. He did more than spank me. He kind of beat me. But it was never to the extent. It was always, there was a start and there was a finish, and then there was him talking to me and explaining why he did it and stuff like that. With what the things that I saw, it was just beatings. There was no rhyme or reason to it. It was just punching, kicking, slapping, hitting, throwing, you know, and I was off limits is all I knew. And from that moment on, I just felt like I wanted to help. That whole fire, my niece catching her leg on fire, is kind of what I think was a catalyst that pushed me towards noticing more things around me and realizing that not everybody had it as good as I did.
And you were involved in I was born in 91, so, you know, I don't remember a whole lot of many wartime activities up until when we went over to Iraq. So, but from everything, I used to read all the history books. I was the weird kid, like, not checking out children's books. I was checking out, like, scenes from World War II, and my elementary school teacher being like, I don't know that's what you should be reading. But I just found it fascinating. I'm like, how did people get so off at each other that this is what's going on? But yeah, the news all the time, seeing the destruction over there, and, you know, they're not super well equipped, it didn't seem like, but they were, you know, just willing to do carnage at times. And so I can't imagine being deployed during that time.
The thing that I think is that they were doing a lot of carnage, but it was with minimal supplies, and they were getting them from Iran or whoever they were getting them from, Syria or whoever were supplying them. But I've got some cool videos that we've taken, and I've made them into these little videos and stuff. And it just shows all of the explosions and stuff. And I have rounds that we've recovered that I have pictures with. And it's just like, I can't believe that this thing right here that isn't even as big as I am is causing as much damage as is going on out here. So yeah, it was a little overwhelming at times, to see the carnage that could be done with such little supplies, like copper wire from a battery of a fan or something, that they would undo the wire, and they would run it from the IED to the trigger point that could have been a mile away. And we can't find that stuff. I mean, right. At one point, they were having people from the States send us silly string, because when we would go through certain fields and their stuff, you'd spray the silly string, because if it landed on wire, sometimes it would just lay there on top of the wire, kind of hang, and you would be able to see the wire, because other than that, you're talking about super tiny. I mean, I like to fish, so you're looking at 4-pound test line thickness of copper wire. And then it's laying on brown grass or brown dirt. You never see it. So we came up with some interesting things to to combat those situations they had.
I wonder who was keeping the silly string alive, because that's a toy that's been around for a long time.
Yeah, well, we soldiers and service members did that for a couple of years there during the Iraq War.
This episode of the Show My Scars podcast is brought to you by Two Oddballs Creative. They're a team of marketing, design, and public relations rock stars out of Springfield, Missouri. Whether you're a startup just like me or an established brand, they are the perfect team to partner with. However, if you're not ready to task them with something just yet, they have some freebie information that you're going to want to take a look at. Head on over to twooddballs.com/blog. That's the number 2, oddballs.com/blog. And they have tons of information that can help you grow your brand all on your own. And whenever you're ready to hit them up for a chat, you can head on over to the contact page on that website, twooddballs.com, or give them a call at 417-986-6332. This episode is also sponsored by an old pal of ours, Rustin Pangburn, from a couple of episodes ago. If you heard that episode, you might remember he was talking about a book that he was working on, and, well, it's finally out. It's called Mindset Matters. It has actual action-oriented advice that can help not just former inmates like themselves rebuilding their career and personal lives, but anyone. As I read it, I kept nodding. It seemed like, while we had different ways of hitting rock bottom, I related to his story so much, and every strategy he suggested are ones that I've used and have suggested to others, or a therapist has recommended to me. So, go over to Amazon and search Mindset Matters by Rustin, Rustin, Pangburn, Pangburn. That's Mindset Matters by Rustin Pangburn, and go grab your copy over on Amazon. How do you keep your head on straight during all that? Like the high stakes mission. I mean, you were telling me a story that I just couldn't comprehend. Like I'm hearing what you're telling me. You know, you're having to make these decisions on sending people into areas that you think are safe. Like you went in and you checked it out, and I think you mentioned that something went wrong one time. Like how do you keep your head on straight during times like that?
You swallow the pain and everything, and you bottle it up, and you don't deal with it right there, because the way I looked at it always is I had my 9 guys with me, to including me was 10. And then I usually had a medic with me, and then I had the EOD, because I did EOD security as an MP. So then I had 4 to 6 guys of EOD with me. So I had 15 to 20 people with me all the time that I had to keep alive. And that was hard. The story I was telling you yesterday is we would come up to we had a cordon, because we're looking for this IED, but the lieutenant wanted to go check on his guys because they were waiting with another IED down the road, and I would never let anyone through our cordon. And after him pestering me for a good 10 minutes, because he didn't have to really go all the way through, he was going to go up about 500 meters and take a left on this dirt road. And I said, okay, yeah, go ahead. I'm going to let you this one time. Don't ever ask me this again. I'm not going to do it, because it was against our SOP. But he was right. It was just right there. It's a quick left. Should be clear. Well, he makes the left, he makes the right, he goes down probably a quarter of a mile. He's crossing over the little creek, and the bridge blows up, and he's gone. And how How do you deal with that? At the time, you just put it away, because I have 15 to 20 other people in my convoy here, and I can't. So you bottle it up and you put it away, and then you go to a memorial 2 or 3 days later. You cry there, and then you go back to work because you can't go home yet.
Yeah.
So you literally just swallow it and put it somewhere. Like I was telling you yesterday, I'm probably on my fifth or sixth counselor. I'm breaking down a little bit. I have some tears building up, but I haven't cried yet. 3 years ago, 4 years ago, if I was telling that story, I would be a blubbering idiot and I wouldn't be able to get through the story or even talk about it. So the counseling that I've gotten, some of it has helped and some of it didn't help as well. But the ones that didn't help also showed me that that wasn't for me.
Yeah.
I needed to go a different way. So how do I deal with it now? Just I talk about it. I remember their names. I pray on it, and I try not to hide it anymore. So if people ask me, I tell them. Up until a few years ago, that wasn't the case, and it's the counseling that has helped a lot with that. And don't get me wrong, I'm still not the greatest person. I'm not anything special. I'm just it's hard to look at pictures of myself back then and just thinking of all the pain that's inside that I'm not dealing with, that I was just masking. There was a lot of pain. I don't think I've ever said this outside of a counseling office. The pain was so bad at one point that while we were, I don't remember if it was Fort Hood or if we were already, no, I think it was still at Fort Hood. I had wrapped a cord around my neck and almost lost consciousness until I was able to breathe again. But that's at the point that was probably my lowest, and I'm coming out of that now. But it's coming out of it also causes problems because now it's dredging up my family trauma that I didn't realize was completely there. And that's what the counselor is gonna. We finished my PTSD EMDR sessions. I had 16 of them or something like that, but she's putting me on for 4 more to follow up to try to get into the family stuff to see if they need to dig deeper or just do a couple of sessions and call it. So,
yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that story, man. That takes a ton of courage. Do they not have mental health professionals out there like helping you guys? Like
we do, but I was so in 0506 is the deployment that I had that was probably the worst for me. We did have doctors and psychologists and counselors, or not counselors, but chaplains. And my last chaplain was a great chaplain. A great chaplain, love him to death. He was the only Catholic priest I had. Great chaplain, always listened, always helped me. We actually had a conversation about what we're talking about right now about 3 weeks ago, just thanking him for helping me get through everything. But I was working as a platoon sergeant, as a squad leader, and as a platoon leader. So I had 3 positions. So I had to take care of the whole platoon on the NCO side and make sure that we had the beans and bullets and everything. But then also I didn't have a lieutenant, so I had to hit that lieutenant's job to make sure that all the missions and everything were set up. And then as a squad leader, I had to run a squad outside the wire. So we did a 3-day turnaround. You did 24 hours on for missions that you went out and took care of IEDs. Then you were down for 24 hours to clean weapons and stuff like that. And then on the 3rd day, you did missions to Baghdad for materials or whatever EOD needed or whatever we might need. So they would do that. So when you're working 3 jobs and I run 24-hour missions one day, and then on my down day, I had to go to Baghdad to pick up supplies. And then I come back and I'm on secondary backing up the primary shift. That's the day that you get to get some of the other stuff done. But you go out for 12 hours of those days on that day. So I wasn't getting I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't getting any time down. And it was just, I see pictures of myself back then during deployment and I'm drained. I am drained. I'm 5'7", 205 pounds, tattoos on both arms, scruffy face. And my favorite movies because of that time, and I just figured this out today at my counseling session, are chick flicks. I had a medic come in one night, and she was outside my room, and she heard me in there watching TV, and she knocked, and she was like, "What are you doing up?" She was like, "Didn't you just come off shift?" And I was like, "Yes, but I can't sleep." She was like, "Well, stop watching these stupid war movies and shoot 'em up movies." She was like, "You're not giving your brain any rest." She was like, "Here, put this movie in," and she gave me Notting Hill. No, I'm sorry, I'm lying. It was Hope Floats, I think. But I watched it, and right after I watched the movie, I watched the whole thing too. So it's not like I fell asleep halfway through. I watched the whole movie, but it calmed my brain so much that I passed right out. And yes, I've one of my favorite movies is The Notebook and all that other stuff. But what I tell people is I don't have to justify anything because of the way I look and my 3 deployments to Iraq. So
That's what we need. We need like retired military movie critics that just do like romantic comedies or something. That I would I would watch hours of that.
Okay, could you imagine me telling you Notting Hill or Hope Floats or whatever? Jennifer Garner was great in this movie, and me, tattoos and everything. People would be like, "What the heck are we watching?"
I don't know, but I'd definitely turn that on and see what they had to say.
Yeah, so no, she helped me a lot with that. So that's where it kind of all ties in together in a weird way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I can't even remember where I was going with that. That just made me laugh.
Yeah. Well, it is like an effective strategy, because something I didn't realize I was doing for a long time was just, especially after I had to leave the Daily Guide and move to the Springfield area, we just reconnected. And I know people listening heard me say this a half dozen times probably, but I started off working at a call center, hated that job. I was going to go ahead and just, keep going, but I wound up getting fired after reporting a superior for bullying another employee. She literally had it set up to where she was like, "Derek, you're so funny. I think if you just like roasted her nonstop, she would quit." I was like, "Well, I'm not doing that." As annoying as she is, like, she's just another person. And you could tell like she was going through stuff. And she keeps it up until where when I'm not doing it, she's starting to put me next to like, dudes that reek, or like she's trying to put me in any position to get me to stop. And finally I had enough, and I went and reported her. And then it turns out the HR lady was like their friends from high school. And so I got fired. And then from there, I fell down to where I was washing cars for $8 an hour and having to try to figure out how to rebuild my life, raise my daughter, and pay off the divorce and everything else during that time. And the whole time that I'm doing this, my playlist and I listen to music all the time, my playlist was full of like the Slim Shady LP, like all sorts of like divorced dad rock that's just like screaming, depressing lyrics over and over. And I'm like, man, I'm wound up all the time. I wonder why that is. It's like we don't realize, as much as food is fuel for our bodies, like the things that we listen to and watch and all that is feeding our brains. And whether I listen to Lloyd Banks, I have no idea what it's like to be pushing drugs in New York City, but I can hear anger in his voice, and I can relate to some of the stuff that he says. Like, all it's doing is adding some fuel to the fire. And I'm not saying I'm never going to give up old school hip hop. I'm sorry, but you can be cognizant of like, hey, this isn't going to be healthy for me right now. So yeah, that makes sense. That's hilarious. I can just envision you laying in bed watching chick flicks.
you really want to envision something, because this is also what I do now that I've gotten into my chick flick era. I guess we'll do like the Taylor Swift thing that she says is, this is my chick flick era. But I also love, because I was in the Army for so long and my feet were so rough, right? And they would dry out and everything. So now I like to do the foot peels at home. The woman foot peels that you get at like Marshalls and stuff in the women's section.
Heck yeah, dude.
And I put them on, and some of them have hearts. And I wear the fluffy socks that they do for Christmas that has aloe in them.
That's
So I'm
amazing.
sitting there in my Dallas Cowboy or Texas Ranger, Dallas Star paraphernalia with women's socks, watching chick flicks. And my wife looks at me sometimes and goes, "I think you're turning into a woman." So
here's what I need. I need her to get a picture of you doing that, and that's what I want to put as like the picture for this episode. It's like
she doesn't need to take a picture. I've had to take pictures to prove this to other people. So and that's easy. We'll just go into the Rolodex and we'll find it.
Oh God, that's amazing. Well, yeah, as a single dad to a preteen daughter who, oh my God, turns 13 next month. I've done I'm, carrying purses. Yeah. I haven't let her put makeup on me yet, and that has made her pretty upset. She's not happy that she's not been allowed to do that to me yet. She has tried to paint my nails while I'm not paying attention, but man, I'm a light sleeper. If someone looks at me when I'm asleep, I'm like, "What are you looking at?"
Okay, well, you just segued into this other story because, like I said, I have a ton of stories, and this one didn't cause any trauma that I'm still dealing with, but it did cause trauma. I was going to the field for a week. The weekend I spent with the family. We barbecued, we hung out. My daughter painted my fingernails and my toenails. At the end of the night, she took all the ones off my fingers off, and I said, "I'll do my toes in a minute. Go ahead and go to bed." My wife and I started talking, doing our thing, eating, cleaning up, doing whatever we had to do. Went to bed. Next morning, I wake up, I pack my stuff, I go to the field. I'm there for 3 days, and they had found us some hard shells, meaning some buildings. There was showers and place we could sleep because we had like 8 inches of snow on the ground. So they wanted us in cover. So I go in there, and we're all smoking outside the showers and just kind of hanging out, being guys, being soldiers. And I was like, well, I'm going to go take a shower. Everybody's in there, and there's guys in there. And I was taking off my clothes. I pull off one sock, and that sock went back onto my foot quicker than you can say, I don't know what. But I threw it back on, put my boots back on, walked outside, and I was like, I think I'll have another cigarette. Waited till the majority of the guys were gone, and then tried to scrub the nail polish off my toes. And I could not do it. And I got picked on pretty hard for that the rest of the time that I was there at Fort Carson. But yeah, so they got to see me with nail polish on my feet. So it was hilarious.
So we got coping strategies for Orlando or chick flicks, pedicures.
Yes. And a nice mauve nail polish.
Yeah, there you go.
You like how I even use the mauve?
So you're doing EMDR and everything. What have you found that's been most helpful for you? I actually, instead of that question, first, I noticed like depending on what it is that you've identified for yourself as like what is causing emotional distress. Like for me, it's like stymied major recurrent depression. And sometimes it can seemingly come out of nowhere. So that's why they've had me doing EMDR, trying to identify like, because I meditate a lot, and that's been super helpful for me, and that has raised my self-awareness like so much. I've been able to identify things within myself. I used to not be able to be patient whatsoever. Like I would lose my mind waiting in a doctor's office or whatever. And now I'm able to either like kind of disassociate in a healthy way, or I can sink into like a little mini meditation where it's just like if I'm in a doctor's office, I can just zero in on a plant over there and then just start going through. It's green, it's waxy, it's probably this, whatever. And so I find that helps me stop ruminating over thoughts that will trip me into a depression or possibly raise my anxiety. I know you talked about you struggle with PTSD. Do you have a diagnosis of any sort that that you've identified with yourself, or?
Yes, I have. Well, the only things that we've identified with, or that I've had identified, has been PTSD, TBI. My kids do have some other symptoms that we are pretty sure come from me. Anxiety, kind of ADHD. I don't get tired. I
Yeah.
can I can work and work and work and be outside and I don't get tired, and my kids have the same thing. But other than that, no, I don't have anything like psychologically. It's the main thing is the PTSD and the TBI,
I'm
and then
blanking right now. What is the TBI?
TBI is a traumatic brain injury,
Oh, okay, yeah,
or CTE is what they're calling it now, I think.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, CTE. So it's just, shaking of the brain. So those are the two things that I've been officially told that I have is the PTSD and the TBI.
So, what do you use to kind of get along with those things? Obviously, you mentioned therapy.
I've done therapy. I've tried sleep meds. The sleep meds, just I can't with the meds. The
Yeah, man.
the sleep medication. Right now, I am on duloxetine to help with depression. I think is what it's for.
Yep.
And that's a low dose, but we might up it a little bit just because of the counseling that I've been going to has been draining me a little bit. But I've been on the duloxetine. I have done the other one. What did I say? Oh, the sleep meds. The sleep meds, I would fall asleep really quick, but I couldn't wake up. So there
Yeah.
was when I stopped doing the sleep meds was when I ended up in my office completely dressed for work, working, and it was about 10 o'clock before I realized that I was actually at work. I
Dang.
I, I don't remember being there for 2.5 hours or whatever I was there. I was just so that's what I stopped that.
Yeah.
I have done medical cannabis while I was in Missouri. And then here they have a THCA that helps me sleep, that helps me calm down a little bit. I just don't like the high all the time.
Yeah.
So I've tried some of the CBD stuff. I haven't found anything of the CBD that really works. And I've looked into it a little bit more with the terpenes and how the terpenes connect to the THC to connect it to the brain more. My wife's big thing, she's a nurse, that the medical effects on the other side of smoking it or whatnot. I understand. I'm not a big fan of the gummies. They just take too long to I don't feel the effects right away. And outside of that, just a lot of talking. I had a brother-in-law that we used to talk about all of our combat trauma together. And then my daughter's godfather in Missouri, Chewy Munoz. You probably remember him. I don't know if you see Chewy. No, you may not remember them because you weren't. They were already out. Anyway, he's from Waynesville, from the Waynesville area, and me and him talked. We talked a little bit, and then another buddy of mine, Terrence Thomas. He's a retired soldier. Also, he's a Rolla police officer now, but we have those conversations. So there, I've got a couple of buddies, a couple of other ones, Todd Parker and Wayne, but they're all ex-service members. Just old Army buddies that I can open up to and talk to. And I reach out to an old sports writer that is doing a podcast, and I said, "Hey, what better way to help cope with my trauma than to put it on a podcast and see if we can get some people to listen to it?"
Like I said, I'm not Theo Vaughn yet, so there's not a whole lot, but I do it. It absolutely, like, on some of the worst days that I've been doing this. It'll be a year next month, and I started off and told myself, like, I don't care, like, don't look at the freaking download numbers or none of that. Just keep doing it right now, because I was using it more as like, hey, this is a living, breathing resume. I'm getting into more of the creative jobs. Like, I found, that the jobs that I enjoy enough to, like, throw myself at and become really skilled at, like sports writer. Like, I don't know if you all knew this, but when I moved to Waynesville, I'd only been a sports writer for 6 months, and then that first year I won 12 different Missouri and Associated Press awards. Like that was crazy to me. And so I've noticed.
I will say that I will say that I would have made the assessment. What the heck am I trying to say? I would have thought that you had only done it for a little while because you look like a baby, if I remember correctly. You look like you were probably what, 24, 25 years old.
Let's see, 2014. Yeah, I would have been 23. Yeah. I just felt like the flip of that already, if not twice that age already, since I had a kid already. But
yeah, I get it. But at that time when I met you, I had mud on my boots that was probably older than you. So.
I go back and forth on talk therapy a lot as far as whether or not it's helpful for me, because it's like, for me, there's 3 pillars of things in my life that I know are not where they need to be, and my eyes are constantly fixated on that. You know, right now, being back in Missouri and having a hard time getting on my feet, I'm living, you know, with my mom, and it just so happens to work well because she's been going through a lot of health issues lately, so I'm here able to take care of most of the things, and that makes me feel like less of a man, I guess, is the harshest way I can put that. And then, you know, still single, still, you know, trying to figure out, you know, how do I get through this life with the least amount of emotional baggage carrying around all the time. And so when I talk to some other people, it's like they know what to say, and it's like, and I know what to think about that. I'm like, you're fortune telling, you're catastrophizing, and you're negative. You're filtering out all the positives there, and yet it happens again. And so it's like, but I do recognize how it makes you feel less alone, because there are times. Oh, I remember what I was about to say. All the with the you know, the small amount of listeners I have currently, I still get those messages from time to time on the worst days of my life, it seems like. And it'll be somebody that I would never expect to be listening. Like a buddy of mine who, I mean, we hang out all the time, and he has never once brought up my podcast. And one day he texted me and he was like, "Hey, I'm listening to this latest one that you did, and man, like, I needed to hear this. I commend you for doing what you do. I know you make no money off of it, and yet you put in all this time." He was like, that was a 2-hour conversation I just listened to. I can't imagine the work that went into that. And I was like, you can bank on every minute that you listen to. It took me 2 minutes to edit, because I go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and like, if anything is not like that whole part where I completely forgot what I was talking about, I'll go back and cut it out. And so, like, there's something about that. It's just, you know, some of us need, you know, EMDR or what, something to dig a little bit deeper.
And what people have to keep in mind, I think, is, like I said, I've already said this earlier, and I said this to you when we were on the phone, is we can't get caught up on it's going to work overnight. Yeah. And the first counselor that you talk to may not be the one that you need to talk to.
Yeah.
And the first thing that you do, like I had told you, the first counselor I went to had me rubbing my palms and my temples. Within the first 15 minutes of us sitting there, she hadn't even talked to me about anything. And I got up and I stormed out, and I told her she was crazy old bat than I was. And I left out of the room, and my wife was like, "You're done already?" I was like, "I'm done with this crazy." So, but then she made me go see somebody else that wasn't going to make me rub my temples and my palms. But what I want to say also is, if you do get what you need out of rubbing your temples and your palms while you're talking, or you're doing the task that they have you, the counselor has you doing, it's not crazy. If it works, it works. I mean, I have talked to my wife about, she's a nurse, and she's like, what if you were ever in an exam or whatever, and they one of those studies that they give you a placebo? I don't care if it's the placebo effect as long as it works. So if the rubbing of the palms and the temples and doing some of the things that I consider a little weird doesn't mean that it's weird, because what I've tried to explain to other people, I have one of my nieces living with us at the moment, and she's always saying how awkward she is. And I'm like, what you don't understand is everybody is awkward to everybody. I was like, if you were a tall white male, this little 5'7", 205-pound Hispanic guy with tattoos is kind of awkward. Some of the things he says or does are a little weird. I was like, if you're a quiet person, I'm loud, I'm annoying. So we're all judging everybody. We're not doing it on purpose. It's just human nature. But don't get stuck with that first counselor, because just because they're doing something that's a little, what we would consider a little cuckoo or a little weird, a little off the wall, might work for the next person. And if it works for you, there's nothing to be ashamed about.
Yeah, my therapist I actually chose her because I had been through, I can't even tell you. Like, I'd have to sit here and think, but it's been double-digit counselors over the last several years. And I stumbled across her. I can't remember if I was looking for somebody for the podcast, and I found her, or how it worked. I ran into her, and I talked to her for a bit, and I read her bio, and she does every cuckoo thing. Like, I mean, it's like chakra work. It's like, I can't, some of it I don't even remember. She has me at times, if I go in there and she's like, how are you doing? And it's just like machine gun fire of like negativity coming out of my mouth. She's like, all right, let's stop and we'll start here. And she starts, tap up here. And then it's here under the arm. And I forget how she walks me through it and what she says at each stop. But the first time I did that, I was like, I'm going to come unglued. And then, I thought, I'll give it a shot. And it worked all right to calm me down in that moment. And I think it's that bilateral movement that causes both hemispheres of your brain to connect. But yeah, do not go to the first therapist and then they say something that doesn't, connect with you, or that it's not going to work. Don't leave there and then never go back. Like, you've got to find somebody else. There have been 2 or 3 therapists that I don't currently see now. And a couple of them have, went out and network or whatever, and I didn't choose to leave. But I've chose to leave one counselor who I told had saved my life. I was like, dude, at this point in my life, if your schedule hadn't opened up and I didn't slot in here, I don't know where I'd be right now. And eventually it just kind of ran its course. I think what happened there was the place he was working was changing ownership, had some bad press. I had been in there. Here's a funny story that has nothing to do with anything. But I was at his office waiting for an appointment, and I was the only one in the waiting room, but there was this guy pacing outside. And from what I can gather, and this is just a hypothesis based on what happened next, his girlfriend, wife, whatever, was there talking to a counselor. I can almost guarantee it was over domestic violence, because he comes in there and he opens the door to where they're doing therapy, which is like, anybody that's never been to therapy, huge no-no to just like burst into someone else's session, and is like, is she almost done? And then I catch the therapist telling her, like, do not go home with him. And then next thing I know, cops are pouring in, and he starts like fighting back, and then he ends up, they're all fighting. He ends up in my lap, and I'm like, oh shit. Here we go. I'm like, now I'm involved. But luckily it all, went off, and unfortunately she left with him, and I hope today that she's okay. But yeah, it's don't be put off, because man, I could have stopped for any number of reasons, and I wouldn't be where I'm at today. Even where I'm at, it's better than where I could be.
Yeah, and that's what I also try to just tell people is it's an old cliche, but you can't make a permanent decision for a temporary problem. We're gonna get through it. It may take a little bit longer. You may have some ups and downs and more downs and ups, but the ups is what we're looking for.
And throughout the hard times, and this is hard to believe sometimes when you're at your lowest point, but these valleys that we're in a lot of times are learning, like it's cliche, but they're learning opportunities. But man, when it's hard, just scan for them. What can I learn from this? Like it sucks, because sometimes I have a little journaling app that forces me to flip my thoughts. It's like it lets me spew everything out, and then it lets me select, like, was it catastrophizing, negative filtering, whatever. And then it's like, what would you say to a friend? And then it has a couple of things that are like, what if my thoughts are true? And I'm like, I clicked that one time, and it's just like, well, like, you know, like, but it's like, it does have a little section that's like, hey, understand that this doesn't have to be permanent. Like the way that you feel now is not permanent. No matter what situation you're in, you're going to feel a percentage different tomorrow. And it's like the only thing you can do right now is I start creating actionable steps. So a lot of the things for me right now are financial. Like, how do I get a place of my own? Mm-hmm. And so it's like, I will sit down, and based on the 3 goals that basically I boiled it down to 2 now. It's like career and creative outlet. What is one thing that I can do today that will push one of those further along? And I start there, and then next thing I know, I'm like, oh, what can I do next? And then from there, things start to calm down a little bit, as long as you notice your progress. And sometimes that is like me understanding, like I said earlier, I'm like, oh, I have more patience now than I ever have. Celebrate that. Because I remember as a kid, someone told me, they were like, if you don't learn patience, you're going to die of a heart attack. And then I've had doctors tell me, if you don't lower your blood pressure, you're going to have a heart attack. And then, then it's a therapist that's like, you have blood pressure problems, patience problems. Like, you're going to die of a heart attack if you don't calm down. Now I can say, hey, man, you've calmed down a little bit. Give yourself a little bit of a pat on the back for that type of thing. Celebrating those small wins, which is another cliche, but some of these things are cliches for a reason.
Exactly. They are.
But man, I've taken up a lot of your time. I appreciate you coming on. I'll ask you one last thing here. Do you still experience like PTSD type symptoms?
Yes, I can't go to a ball game without crying for the national anthem and smells. There's a lot. So yeah, there's still.
Has there been anything that you've used that has helped in any amount for those things?
For those things in particular, the best thing that has helped me is being able to talk about it. Medicine hasn't helped. THC hasn't helped. Over-the-counter home remedies or the all-natural stuff. I've tried almost everything that you can think of. And for me, I think when I've noticed the most is when I can have an outlet or somebody to talk to. All my buddies are all Army buddies, so they're all over the world. I've got some in Hawaii, some here, there, and whatnot. So it's not like I can just get with my friends and talk to them anytime. But I do have a few people here and there that I talk to and I use as an outlet. So that's for me personally, that's what's helped the most, to just get it off my chest and realize that me talking about the individuals, Lieutenant Cox, Carlos Dominguez, Michael Shank, just to name a few, Johnny Lindy, people that I knew that were KIA'd and stuff, and the things that I saw. What helps me the most, even though it's hard at times, is just to talk about them and tell their story, let people know that there was a person that was like this, and to let them know. And it's not anything for people to say thank you for your service or whatnot. It's just so that they are truly not forgotten. And today in my session, because we do the EMDR and then we do a little bit of talking. Today in my session, she was like, I think they're visiting you, because we're doing the EMDR and I could picture them like talking to me.
Yeah.
And she was like, I think they're coming to say it's okay. It's okay. It's not your fault. And she had some good things to follow up on and work with. But it all comes back to me talking. So the EMDR helps with the memories and to pull things out. But for me, the best thing is just talking about it. So as much as I wanted to do this to kind of help you out with an episode, if you by chance needed to use it or decided to use it or whatnot, this is also helping me, because it lets me talk about it and just get it off my chest. And I think, again, that's what helps me the most. So
yeah, because something I've repeated multiple times on this, and in my last episode, my guest echoed it. It's like processing that stuff works it through our system. The memories may never go away, but the way that they actually physically impact us as well as emotionally impact us lessens each time. Whereas if you're, keeping it at arm's length and pushing it away and ignoring it is only going to make things worse. Like when you talked about, just swallowing that stuff out on duty, man, that makes me feel for you so much, because I can't freaking imagine trying to just hold on to that and then do your duty at the same time. That amazes me. And yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your service. Like, and especially like, I just as a person, like I know like it's been forever since we talked, but when I saw your name, I freaking did remember you. And like you guys treated, there's so many families though that I could say this about from Waynesville that treated me so well. Some of them were, giving me cards when their kids would graduate, and that crap meant so much to me, especially after I'd went through my divorce and I was there by myself. Like I had no actual friends. My friends were your all's kids' coaches. Like, it would be like we'd do an interview and then it's like, all right, I get 10 minutes where I can just chat ball with this guy.
Yeah.
And that was it. And then I'd go home and write and play video games and go to sleep and do it all over again. So like, man, too, I appreciate you reaching out. That was another one. I get that message and I'm just like, yeah, he knows me, but like I don't know if we were connected on there beforehand, but I was like, for him to reach out and like give a crap about what I do, that's savoring moments. That's one more thing if you're having a hard time with anything, whether it's PTSD or whatever, those little wins, relish in them. Take a beat. And yeah, and in the random good times, like recently I took a vacation with my daughter just to Eureka Springs, just, somewhere driving distance away that I could afford. I sat down and wrote a journal to savor that.
Yeah, no. And that's the thing that you have to do the most of is my wife gets on me and she says that I don't stop and smell the roses enough. That's one thing that I need to work on. But yes, that is definitely, you have to stop. And even if it's a small win, relish in it and enjoy it and realize that from there, they're just going to get bigger and better.
Well, thanks for taking the time to talk to me tonight, man. I appreciate you.